In the historic town of Black River is a monument that hundreds of people pass by every day as they drive or walk about their business. Few notice it, or if they do, few take the time to read the inscription that would surely jolt their hearts and minds. It tells of a shocking incident that began to unfold in November of the year 1781. The monument is a memorial to the Africans who were transported on an infamous ship named the Zong. What happened on that ship had repercussions that have lasted until the present day. The Zong was a slave ship. It was originally Dutch, but was captured by the British off the coast of West Africa in 1781. By the time it left Africa that September, it was loaded with 440 captive Africans. This was more than twice the number a ship of that size was constructed to carry. Slave ships were packed. The Zong was overpacked. The journey from Africa to the New World was called the Middle Passage, and the typical crossing would last 6 to 11 weeks. The Zong sailed for 16 weeks before it docked in Jamaica. During the journey, both the crew and their captives began to get sick and die. The Zong was destined for Kingston, but due to an error in navigation, the ship sailed way past Jamaica, and by the time the crew realized the error, they were 300 miles past the island. They had to turn back. By this time, the sickness was rampant. The crew knew that the Zong's owners could not make an insurance claim for any Africans who died from natural causes before they could be sold. But insurance could be claimed if it was proved that some of the cargo had to be sacrificed in order to save the rest. By cargo, they meant the Africans. So over the course of about a week, 122 Africans were thrown overboard to die in 3 batches, starting with 54 women and children on November 29. A batch of 42 men was next on December 1, and over the next few days, another 36 men. An additional 10 jumped to their deaths, choosing to take their own lives as a last act of defiance. Black River was the port where the Zong docked when it finally reached Jamaica almost a month later. The surviving Africans were auctioned in the Black River slave market. When news of what had transpired reached England, the owners of the Zong made an insurance claim for the 132 people murdered by the crew, saying that a lack of drinking water had forced them to sacrifice some Africans in order for the rest to survive. The insurers refused to pay, as there was evidence that there was enough water on board when the last batch of people was thrown overboard. The owners sued the insurers, and the case went to court. The lawsuit gained a lot of attention, firstly as an insurance case, but very importantly, it also forced the English public to confront the horrors of the slave trade. There was a call by the anti-slavery lobby for the crew to be put on trial for murder, but the law at the time recognized the drowning of the Africans as being the same as horses or pieces of wood being thrown overboard. Although no one was tried for murder, the Zong case helped the abolitionist movement to grow. Eventually, over 20 years later in 1807, the British slave trade was abolished. This meant that British ships could no longer legally transport Africans to be sold in Jamaica or the rest of the New World. It took another 30 years before full emancipation of all the enslaved in British colonies took effect in 1838. For those of us from Black River whose families have been here for many generations, I often wonder if any of our ancestors were survivors of the Zong. It is very likely. But no matter where we are from, the story of the Zong should give us pause, as we stop to consider what our lives would have been like had we been born at a different moment in history. We have a lot to be thankful for.